Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So what I'll be presenting today is on the diversity amongst within Shia Islam. And I use the term Shia quite broadly here. So as we'll go along, you'll find out what I mean by that. So considering Ali as the first, as the successor of the Prophet, and we'll see later on that certain sects or subsects do not consider themselves as Shia or even Muslim for that matter. But I've used my discretion here. So a few assumptions, or rather the purpose before we start, is to showcase the diversity within Shiism. For me, it was a learning experience, and I think because we're here in different diverse opinions, just to showcase within Shia Islam there is so much diversity. A couple of assumptions that I've made, it's based primarily from the 12th Shia lens. As we'll see, if you were to look at it from a, let's say, Ismaili perspective, we would see the mainstream as different. So I'm looking at it from a 12th Shia lens. It isn't by any means comprehensive. There's so much to talk about, so much to discuss, but I'm just going to do a brief overview of these different subsects. And I'm not going to look at cultural variances and interpretations. So I created this chart. It's a brief sort of the different subsects. I appreciate it's small, but we'll expand it later on. Of these different, at each point in time, there are these different breaking points of different subsects. So let's start up there with the Saba'iyya. And one of the purposes in presenting this topic is sometimes what happens, especially in polemics, is that we tend to brush an entire sect with a certain belief. So for example, Abdullah bin Sabah, right? It's claimed that he is the founder of Shiism. But if we look at his life, we see that he is this individual who converted to Islam. And he had these tendencies. He is stemming from a Jewish background, a Yemeni Jewish background. And according to certain narratives, كان يغلو على يوشع بن نون. Whilst he was a Jew, he used to exaggerate the status of Yusha bin Nun. And then when he became a Muslim, كان يغلو على علي. He used to exaggerate the status of Ali. And from him comes this sect, the Saba'iyya, which are considered an extremist, ghulat sect within Shia Islam. And he had certain tendencies like beliefs like Ali didn't die and he would return, or that Ali is God and that he is the Prophet. According to some narratives, he was banished and some of his followers were burnt alive. Now, this comes to the topic of the ghulat, the extremists within Shia Islam. Basically, they were extreme in, or exaggeration, they would exaggerate the status of the imams to a level of divinity. And there are differences in definition of who is a ghali, what constitutes one of a ghali, what are the beliefs of the ghali. But at the very basic level, those who would exaggerate the status of the imams to a level of divinity. So if we look at the Saba'iyya, it breaks down, and we find this in all of the sects. They break down into different subsects. And I'm not even going into the details. I'm very briefly outlining the different subsects within, let's say, for the Saba'iyya. So that we have this extreme sort of subsect within the Saba'iyya who believe, they had this belief, for example, in Khaybar, that Ali fought, and this certain individual from this subsect believed that Ali was God. So in this narrative, if you are to accept it, Ali kills this young man. The mother of the mother of this man comes and says, "Can you raise him back alive?" And Ali brings him back alive, and continues to say, "You are God." And this happens 7 times. So this is an example of the supernatural power attributed to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And we find this creeping into different subsects also. Another interesting subsect from Ali is Muhammad al-Hanafiya. Now, Hussein bin Ali passed away in 61 AH, Battle of Karbala. One of those individuals who it is claimed to have avenged the death of Hussein was Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. different narratives around this individual. One view is that he was the avenger of Hussein. Another view is that no, he was a political player, and in fact, some Shias view him negatively because of him wanting to hand over Hassan, for example, to Muawiyah. So there are these different beliefs. So from Mukhtar's army was Kaysan, who was the leader of the Mawali of Mukhtar's contingent. And from this comes the name Kaysaniya. The Kaysaniya believed Muhammad bin Hanafiya, al-Hanafiya as the Imam, and beliefs, theological beliefs now tend to form, such as Muhammad al-Hanafiya is in occultation in a place called Radwa, a cave called Radwa. And we find this term Radwa creeping into Shia literature. Or for example, the notion of Bada, God changing his will. So for example, Mukhtar al-Thaqafi was known to have predicted his outcome in a battle, and that didn't go according to his prediction, and hence this notion of Bada comes. So Mukhtar is venerated in this subsect, and they are considered extreme. Now from them are different other subsects. One of them is the Abbasiyya. It's claimed that the Banu Abbas stem or have origins from this subsect, and then when they came into the power, they disassociated themselves from this belief, the beliefs of the Kaysaniya. Then we have Ali bin Hussein, Zain al-Abidin, son Zayd, and from Zayd comes the Zaydiyya. Zayd rose up against the caliph at the time, the Umayyad caliph at the time, and he was killed. However, at this point, the Zaydiyya, who are very up for standing up against injustice, they do not believe in the hereditary nature of imama. So we find theologically certain beliefs are again forming around the Zaydiyya. And Zaydiyya, again, the different variations of the Zaydiyya. For example, the notion of the Sahaba, right? They view them very fairly and moderately. And again, the variances within the Zaydiyya, some would say that Ali was the rightful caliph, the others were wrong, but we don't say that they committed a sin, or the variances within the Zaydiyya. So Zaydiyya, as we know today, and they've had influence. I'm not even looking at the political influences that these different subsects had, but it's claimed that in Morocco, in the Idrisid era, and also other dynasties were influenced by the Zaydis. Even today in Yemen, we have the Houthis, who are Zaydiyya in their orientation. So then what happens is, at the time of Muhammad Baqir, Ja'far Sadiq, we find a plethora of other Shia subsects coming about. And one of them is, for example, the Khattabiyya, and from them stems the Ghurabiyya. Now there is, the Ghurabiyya had this belief that Jibreel descended with Risala, and he came down onto earth and he saw Muhammad and Ali, but they were like two ghurab. They were like crows. We couldn't distinguish which one is which, who is Muhammad, who is Ali. And by mistake, the Risala went to Prophet Muhammad. And this is a belief held by this extremist in the sense of the ghulati sort of tendencies within the Shia. And then as we go further on in the line, we have the Ismailiyya. Now, as we know, the Ismailiyya stemming from Ismail bin Ja'far as-Sadiq. Here we know the Fatimid dynasty founded by the Ismailis, and even here in the sort of successorship, we have the Druze breaking off at Al-Hakim. Now the Druze wouldn't identify themselves as Shia or Muslim for that matter, but they certainly are influenced by these sort of beliefs. The Ismailiyya even have their different subsects. So for example, the Bohoras, and even the Bohoras, they have different subsects, the Sulaymaniya, the Dawudiyya, and the progressive Bohoras. So they believe that, for example, their Imam Tayyib is in hiding, and they have different da'is, they have Lisanud Da'wa as their language. So even contemporary times, there is a struggle, there was a struggle just a few years ago on who the next da'i is amongst the Dawoodi Boharas, between the 52nd, 53rd, who is the next da'i? Is it the son or is it the brother? So these issues of successorship are also played out till today. We know the Nizaris, the Aga Khanis have influence, political, monetary influence throughout the world. So this is a very brief overview of the different subsects within the Shia. And there's so much more to talk about. We have one group known as the Waqifiyya, because they did waqf. And again, this is from a 12th Shia lens. So at Muhammad al-Baqir, they stopped at Muhammad al-Baqir as the Imam. They did waqf at that Imam. At Ja'far al-Sadiq, there was waqf. The Imam went into ghaiba according to some of the Waqifiyya, and even amongst the Waqifiyya, the different subsects. So at each point of the Imams, there are groups forming, there are groups considering this Imam to be the last Imam, or this Imam has gone into occultation. Now that's within the Shia. So if even within the 12th Shia, there is so much diversity. So for example, we see the usuli akhbari sort of differences in interpretation of law, in tools used in the derivation of law. Usulis use methodology in interpreting the law, and akhbaris, very literalistic, use the akhbar in interpreting law. And again, I'm generalizing. There's lots of nuances in these discussions, but for sake of time, we have the Shaykhiyas, for example, founded by Sheikh Ahmad al-Ahsa'i, who had certain beliefs, and the hukum of he was done, takfir was done on him, and from there stems this Shaykhi sort of movement. This is within interpretation of law. We also have the philosophical, mystical trends within 12th Shi'ism, the philosophical, mystical trends influenced by Sadrian philosophy, by Akbarian mysticism, Ibn al-Arabi, influence on this. And we have also on the other spectrum certain Shias who are philosophical or not very pro-philosophy, mystical sciences in their study of Shiism, because they consider these sciences as foreign influences. We have the political movements within Shias. So for example, the Wilayat al-Faqih, the belief that the Faqih has absolute authority. And we find that in modern day Iran. While some of the Shia do not consider the Faqih to have that much authority with regard to politics. And I'll end here. So this is a brief overview within the Shias and within 12ers. So if you have any questions, feel free.